Hi there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I am your host, Florence Adu, coming to you with part 2 of my conversation with filmmaker and lecturer and director and editor. She's a woman of many creative talents, Aseye Tamakloe. So in case you missed it last week, we started our conversation talking about our usual why the where, Glocal speak, and right now we're going to pick up the conversation with Aseye telling us a little bit more about how Women Speak came into being as a work, as a documentary, and as a piece of Ghanaian history. Some background on my guest. She is a filmmaker and lecturer at the National Film and Television Institute and a PhD candidate at the Institute of African Studies, University of Ghana Legon, both in Accra. She's worked as an editor, director, and producer on a number of local and international productions. And she is co-programmer for the Film Africa Festival, which is London's biggest celebration of African and African diaspora cinema, presented by the Royal African Society. She was the festival manager and director of the European Film Festival Ghana. She is founder and festival director of Ndiva Women's Film Festival, which aims to create artistic platforms for the presentation and preservation of work by, for, and about women. And most recently, she is director and editor of the documentary film When Women Speak. And that's where we pick up our conversation once again.
When it comes to women's things that affect women, there always has to be some form of organizing. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't know the stories about how some of these organizations happened, you know, and how much work went to it and how some of these things also caused certain successes.
Sure.
Today, when we of a certain generation are enjoying things that we probably wouldn't. Because when you look at some of the things we're able to do as Ghanaian women and you look at just next door,
right. Yeah.
Like take Nigeria, you know, somewhere.
Yeah.
Someone, I think it's Professor Tishon, who said that West Africa is such a bad neighborhood, such that Ghana, with all our chaos, you know, shines because, you know, we're just in a bad neighborhood. You know?
I like that. That's a good way to describe it.
You know? So, I mean, but there are things we enjoy today that other people don't.
It's true. We have a benefit here.
Yeah.
And I like what you said about the real thing that it seems like a tool of old is actually the organizing and really understanding that we have to be organized. We have to come together and speak with each other to be organized. And I think social media and I think just a general political disenfranchisement has estranged the youth from being the participants that they really need to be. And then we have a class issue that then exacerbates the problem. And so when you were speaking with these women from these particular areas, what were some of their takes on how re-energize and get young people to understand the burden that is theirs now?
It's good you use the word burden because they also appreciate that there's a burden. Mm-hmm. And even though they felt that they hadn't done enough, and I wish they didn't feel that way because looking at...
Yeah, they did a lot.
They did a lot. They can't do it all. Mm-hmm. And also something happens with activism. Fatigue sets in sometimes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it's natural because these are human beings. Mm-hmm. They have lives, they have families, and etc. And you know, for the women, it's never easy. You probably are raising your child or somebody's child and you're still working and you're maybe somebody's wife or not or somebody, but you're still somebody's child. Your work is just...
Yes, constant.
Yeah, but they understand that they need to work harder at closing a certain gap. Now, it's interesting because, you know, if you watch our film, Professor Dolphine, at the time she had joined the National Council on Women and Development, was working with Justice Annie Jaggi and had worked with Mrs. Oklu and all those people. At the time we were interviewing Professor Dolphine, who was the first female pro-vice chancellor of the University of Ghana, she was already an octogenarian.
Right.
I mean, in the documentary, she tells you that by 63 or 64, she had done her PhD and was coming back to Ghana. I'm like, what?
Oh.
You know, now...
Yeah.
Professor Abbeyquaye here, Mrs. Apalu, Dr. Skokapia. Some of this, majority of these women actually were Professor Dolphine's students.
Aha, okay. So there's an anchor in mentorship.
Now, there's a story that doesn't make it into the film, but for the first time under the tutelage of Professor Dolphine, when Mrs. Elizabeth Apalu was a student of the University of Ghana and was in Volta Hall, they had their first elections. In the beginning, they just choose people. And then she was in charge at the time, and then the girls approached her and said, why don't we have an election, let people actually contest it? And she encouraged them, and they did. And when they finished the and the girls won some positions, etc., she actually organized a party for them.
Okay.
So, but also that all these women to have worked together in different stages. So Mrs. Apollo has once also worked with NCWD before. Mrs. Botmiller has. I mean, so they have taken from each other. There had been some generational pass-ons over time.
Yeah.
Maybe it's true that in Gen Z, millennials, before millennials maybe, but especially probably between millennials and Gen Z, there is a certain gap. Also because of many obvious factors and also none. Like you said, politically, there's a certain disenfranchisement of young people. But also sometimes too, even though action has happened on social media, there's also, I think, a certain over-reliance also.
Yes.
Sometimes young people don't like to hear this. They get very defensive about this. But I think that understanding how to organize, but you can also blame young people because sometimes people think that it's safer to do it online to be in person.
Right, the anonymity of it, feeling, threatened safety-wise.
There's also that. But I think also is the times, each time and the demons we have to deal with. And so there's an acknowledgement that there's a gap. And so there is different attempts. But like I said, some of these women are octogenarians now. Some are in their 70s.
So they spent decades.
And also, I think the youngest person who was in that film, who was Professor George Chiketa, is over 16. I think she's 60 or 61 now. So I'm not trying to hold brief for them, but there will be certain struggles. So the honor to some people like us who are, who are a few years ahead of millennials and Gen Zs.
Sure.
Or am I a millennial? I don't know. To try to also work to close the gap. But I keep telling people that this film is one way of making that entry of the closing of the gap.
Yes.
Because if information is not available and accessible to young people, there's nothing for them to hold on to.
It's true.
And unfortunately, we've lived in a world where, like I said, women's stories have been written out of history or intentionally on whatever it is. And so people don't have stories.
Yeah, no access.
People don't have access. People don't have information. And so if this film and also the transcripts of the hours of interviews we have are made available, now the film is open access.
Oh, good.
People will be able to learn and hear and see what has been done so that there wouldn't be certain reinventions of wills. People will not feel that others have not done anything because work has been done. So I'm hoping that as the knowledge gap is closed or closes, we can engage more. And also I think that when it comes to organizing and activism, it's like how life is, things happen, then there's a rapture, then there's a coming together again.
Sure, it's like a wave.
I think there'll be another slowly coming together because the world is also getting into a place that we can't seem to
we're
have words for yet.
Yes, we're entering crisis. Let's just put it that way.
We're in a crisis.
Yes, we're in crisis,
So we hope that young people don't fall into the trap that young people fall into when people feel that we are the ones to start it. What has been done, nothing has been done. Whatever has been done in a certain way. So we have to, so that there's an appreciation of a building on.
Right.
But it's a very difficult question to answer in one line.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think that in recent times, you also find young women also coming up with different voices, but also trying to find their space in all forms of the activism that exists. And so slowly, maybe as they get a bit from what has been left off, they can pull others along. It's a tricky one.
It really is. I mean, and making history is not so straightforward, right? So
Has never been.
It's never been. And so I really think, and of course, value the education that I myself got from, digging deep into the stories of these women in the movement, and how a lot of the activities and actions that they took had extremely broad implications for the whole society. And so tell us where we can now find the film, and a little bit more about the business of bringing that film to life. So it started as a study, and then it became a film. So for those people who are in this industry looking to do these types of projects, how do they actually make it come to fruition?
Collaboration. There's one thing I learned from, I think, being in the academic space. Sometimes you go to conferences, but sometimes when you go to a conference that's like taught,
yes,
and the people are generous enough to teach you about networking. It's such an important thing, unbelievably important, because we're social beings.
Very true.
And so as social beings, we will interact. We will, whether you're suffering a depression or not, there will be certain engagements, and there are relationships you will lose. There are some you have to keep. There are some you have to work hard at keeping, depending on the goal.
Yes.
And where you want to go. But collaborations don't just happen in a vacuum. You build relationships, you work on it, you strengthen. Integrity is important. Honesty is important. And so that's how this whole project came about, out of collaboration. So there's another person involved in the project called Dr. Rosemensah Kuti, who is actually in the film, who is also the director of Abantu, Ghana. And Dr. Rosemensah Kuti has done a lot of grassroots organizing of women, a lot of it. And so she was the go-to person, to also find some of the women. But actually, she connected Professor Skinner and Professor Adomako, because she knew they all had this interest. Wanted to do this work, but but at the same time too, they are all connected as friends, and also in the academic an academic space or in academia. So this kind of network. So there's a connection. They grew the relationship, and then now they realized they could work together.
Got it.
And so the collaboration was between the University of Birmingham at the time. Professor Skinner was a faculty of the University of Birmingham, the University of Ghana, the Institute of African Studies, where Professor Adomako is, and then they also got some money from the British Academy.
Okay.
And then British Sustainable something, I'm forgetting, for innovation or something.
Sure.
And so the funds came in bits, and also when it came to the equipment, it was such that when the work was done to the T, some of the equipment will be now donated to the Institute of African Studies as well. So there was all this,
a lot of right.
But sometimes these are the things you have to do to get the story told.
It's true.
Because nobody's going to come from Hollywood to tell this particular story.
At all, yeah. Documentary filmmaking is the most challenging because it's a special interest to some degree. So, yeah, that's why I
And even for the story being told, no person is going to put their commercial money in that.
Right.
They must really want to tell it.
Sure.
And even that will come with strings.
Exactly. And you change the story to meet their needs, that type of thing.
So agreement had to become, things have to be agreed on, backs bent a bit, compromises. But it wasn't things that were going to kill us or also take away to our power or also disenfranchise us in any way.
Sure.
So yes, all of these things were agreed. And then we got to work and started doing the research. So at the time, we had a postdoc research person on the project called Dr. Jobi Asalifu, who did a fantastic job. He had such great human relations that he was able to find the women, And thankfully, people have always asked, how was it like? And I said, for starters, these people, when it comes to the space of activism, these are royalty. You give Caesar what is due Caesar, whatever they say. So we went into spaces, we acknowledged, you were humble enough to want to listen. You conducted yourself well, and so you were allowed in more and more. Plus they themselves also acknowledge that the stories must come out.
Right.
Not all of them will have the time and energy to write autobiographies or get people or biographies or whatever. So this is another way of writing them into history. And also especially when it's coming from their mouth. So you can't overly go and dismiss it.
Right, exactly.
Things like that. So all of this culminated into getting this done. But in working in this kind of space, it's tears and blood and heart. Because one, this is not a film where we will give to a distribution company.
Right. Like you said, it's open access now, so it's...
And you'll be making any royalties off it.
Yeah.
But we come to the world and we need to fight for something.
Yes.
We cannot live here without making any impact, whatever way. An impact is made in different forms.
Sure.
So if this is how it's made, so of course we got paid, but it's not a forever payment, but it was still well paid for. And that in volunteering for the world, this is also a gift you give, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing to be able to understand, to be in this space, is to understand the concept of collaboration. And sometimes, sometimes in these collaborations, people will try to cheat and it's a human institution.
It is.
But you hope that, but also that you become diligent. You, like I said, it's film. In the area of film, you lose a bit, but you learn and become more diligent. But one thing I think African filmmakers, especially Ghanaian filmmakers, should understand is that where the world is heading, collaborations are the better way.
Yes.
Are the better options we have than, and in collaborations, you can access different kinds of funds, the soft ones, the hard ones, bits and pieces from here. But yes, sometimes you want to do it by yourself, and also because people have been beaten many times.
Yeah.
But collaboration, and we should cultivate good human relations, and sometimes we also must learn to let go when we have to.
It's true.
But like I said, learning to lose is part of the game.
Sure.
But I think I've said it a lot. It's about collaboration.
Yeah, nice. So that's a great way to move into my mindset hack. So we wanted to know, what is your favorite or an innovative mindset hack? Now, this is one that you practice, one that you know of, one that you can imagine.
Mindset hack. I think I have a couple, but
sure.
That you forgive yourself for what you didn't know before.
Okay.
And now you know better, you do better. And I keep saying forgive yourself because life is hard already. And so if you can't forgive yourself, you'll not be able to be kind to others.
It's true.
Which is very important. And because of the places we are born, or the societies we are born into and the things we live with, there's trauma already. And so if you can't forgive yourself, you carry...
You're injuring yourself all the time.
There's a lot more you'll be carrying, and it's dangerous. And you will die alive, but you're dead, And of course, we don't talk a lot about mental health issues, but they're because they manifest differently and we don't know what they are.
Sure.
But also because we haven't been kind to ourselves. And I keep saying kind because it's also difficult to be kind to yourself. It's not as easy as it sounds.
It's not as easy, partially because we've come from a place where kindness is a commodity. So people have commoditized the kindness. So it's a barter. It's not nature. And so I noticed that quite a bit. Like just everyday driving. Everyone wants to get someplace. We're all getting to the same place. But even just allowing someone to merge in, even allowing a pedestrian to walk by, we just haven't, we're estranged from, here in Ghana, and I think a lot of places, but particularly here, I think we somehow...
We have lost it.
Yes.
Once upon a time, it was better.
Yeah.
Now... There's a lot of pretentious living. We all think we are racing somewhere. There's somewhere to go, but really there isn't. Yeah, but also because we have lost touch with being kind to ourselves.
Yeah.
So we carry all of this on in So I think one of my hacks is forgive yourself, so you can be able to be kind and forgive others, and also forgive yourself for what you don't know now, so that when you know what you didn't used to know, and then when you know now, you do better.
Yeah, I think that's lovely, and it's very gracious. Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about you, who is the worker and the filmmaker, but I always like to ask a little bit more about what you do when you're not working. And, and I know a lot of creatives have a lot of food for thought in the question that I typically ask. So I ask if you're a reader, a watcher, or a listener, and what are some of your favorite reads, watches, or listens?
I think I'm all.
Okay.
I'm a reader, I'm a watcher, I'm a listener. So I read a lot.
Yes.
And especially novels from Africa or the African diaspora.
Love it.
Who
are some of your favorite authors?
Oh my God.
Or a book that you would love to share.
One of my very favorite authors of all time is it Paulo Coelho or Silo?
Oh, okay. Yeah, Paulo.
I don't know
Coelho,
how to mention.
yeah.
I've never bothered to actually go and listen to how the last name is mentioned. My first encounter with him was in 2003 or 4, and I've stuck with him since. Yeah. Of course, Chinua Achebe. Of course, I love Amataidu. I love Kofi Abbeyquaye. Kofi Abbeyquaye has a short story titled Just to Buy Corn. So in the 60s, there used to be this literary journal, sort of, called Ochiami. And it was edited by Ifo Sutherland and Kwabe and Professor Nketia and a couple of that generation. And he has a short story, Just to Buy Corn, and it's so moving. And I liked Leila Bulela.
Okay.
I think she has Sudanese background. Of course, I like Chimamanda.
Yes.
I've loved everything she's written. When I first read Purple Hibiscus,
that's when most people fell in love.
Yes, It made me. There really is not a correlation between Purple Hibiscus and Jane Eyre, but for some reason I cried for the two books, and that also reminds me of when I cried reading Khalid Hussein's Kite Runner.
Oh yes,
So I have a long list.
Yes, but these are great. Yeah,
okay. I have a long list. I love. Sula from and Beloved from Toni Morrison. And I read Beloved. I watched Beloved before I read Beloved.
Same.
And all my encounters have been single encounters because Beloved was so heavy. I've never been able to go back to watch it, but also memorable. Yes.
Yeah.
And one of also my very favorite I watched it before reading was A Color Purple. For a long time it was one of my favorite films.
Yeah. There's an anniversary this year.
Yes.
Yeah. I saw something on Instagram where Oprah was like, look at all the purple.
Yeah. I like good music. I like I have a huge repertoire. But I'm a huge reggae fan.
Okay.
I'm a huge Bob Marley fan. Then I like Joseph Hill culture.
Okay, culture.
I like Mukta Baruch. So of course I like Ghanaian music. Amachi Dede.
Okay.
I really love Amachi Dede. And then I like the old highlight music.
Yes.
I like opera music.
Oh,
I really love opera.
It's the vibration that puts your mind in. Because the wave goes through you. So that's exactly
I love opera. I love Bocelli, I love Pavarotti, I love Zucchero, whether he's called Zucchero or something. That's of course he's not young now, but when I first encountered him, it was Eros Ramazzotti or something. I love music. If it's good music, I'm listening. All kinds of genre. White club genre. Anyway, so I could go on. I have a long list.
Okay.
For radio, I really like to listen to the BBC.
Okay.
Especially when they used to. When they had radio dramas, especially African radio dramas. And then also I like the radio documentaries. Why I like them is that even though it's sound and voices, or text, wherever, there's a way in which if your imagination is fertile,
it brings it to life.
You can go very far. And even if it's not, there's a way in which they awaken things inside you.
Yeah.
I think the sound design work in their documentaries are fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a podcast that's online Twitter. For some strange reason, I've gone blank with their name, but I know that their logo has a red color, white and green inside. There's something radio. It's on Twitter. Mark or something. Yeah, I'll find it one way. I think we're done.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm into many things. Of course, I have very little time.
Right.
So I do all of these things in between. But my husband says that I'm a witch because for all the bad things I carry, when I'm talking about something like, so when did you listen to this one? So when did you watch this one? So in between, I still time to be abreast with. But I love to listen. I love to watch. I love to all of that.
I find it's important to keep my creative spark, right? Because there's always inspiration in things, and obviously sometimes I go into my own self and I sit in quiet. But but I listen a lot too. So a lot of listening, and I do a lot of audiobooks and things like that. And so usually I'm reading a book and then also have an audio.
Yeah, solitude to something.
Yeah.
For me, sometimes the difficulty with me is that I'm slowly realizing that I have to moderate my solitude. Because I really like being by it's a slippery slope. I have a daughter, I have a husband, my mom lives with me, but I miss also being a single person.
Yeah.
I can miss it so terribly.
Yeah.
But also for me, solitude, if I overstretch it, I start getting to the dark side, which is not,
Yeah.
I swear I shouldn't
It's
be going.
good to be aware.
So that balance is something I pray for, that that I should try and be on that path. So because I easily can, go to the dark side and just not wanting to be with anybody, which is dangerous. So yes, but beyond that, but also I think that I hope that I get to live this line in the poem Desiderata, that and it's one of my favorite poems. A good friend of mine introduced it to me when we were in secondary school. I think we were about 16 or 15 at the time. And there's a line in which that says that, I think the ending, that says that with all its pain and drudgery, it's still a beautiful life, and let's strive to be happy. And that there will be bigger and lesser persons than yourself, something like that. So even till today, once in a while I go to Desiderata, just when the imposter syndrome or self-doubt wants to rear its head, Right. But so it's pain will be there.
Yeah.
But we'll still strive to be happy. Indeed. And that's why balance is a simple yet a difficult word, because it's simple, but its practice is difficult. Balance. Right. And those who have been able to achieve it, I admire them greatly.
We're all working towards it. Aseye, this has been so lovely. Thank you for being so generous with your time and coming out. And we've called the rain spirits. I'm sure you all can hear it now. But before we go, do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience? And please tell us where we can find you and where we can find the film.
So I tweet at Tamakloe Aseye. On Instagram, I'm Aseye Tamakloe. On Facebook, Aseye Tamakloe. You can find the film at www.whenwomenspeak.com. The film is the questions about the film, where we screen, everything about the film is there. Some links to some of the transcripts are always there. And it's a very beautiful and engaging website, so you won't be lost, you'll enjoy it. My final words is that where we come from the part of the world we come from, especially from our continent and its diaspora, for us, art is not for art's sake. Our art is functional. And I'm not saying that people should be didactic, in their arts, but we just don't have the luxury to have absolute art for art's sake. So it's about finding the balance. But also that there's this burden we carry as people of African descent or African people, that there's a certain story we should tell. We do not have to tell a certain story. You tell the story that speaks to your heart.
Exactly.
And of course representation matters, but there's a pressure, and I hope we all work towards not falling underneath that. There's a certain story to be told.
Yeah. All stories have a place.
All stories matter.
Yes, exactly. And that's a great place to end. So, local citizens, that's going to do it for this episode. You can catch us Tuesdays with new episodes at glocalcitizenspod.com or wherever you get your podcasts. You can like, share, subscribe. Go to Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon. You get the drift, wherever you can find us. And please, give us a review. It helps others find great content on the internet. So until next time, bye for now.